Hello, beautiful change makers. Welcome back to Iconic Leaders Rise, the place where you get to harness that fire and step into your iconic leadership. I'm Anahita June.
I'm Aaron Glassman.
And we are so thrilled and honored to be sitting here today with our sister, Clare Dubois, the founder of treesisters.org, a global women's movement supporting humanity's evolution into a restored species. To date, they have planted over 5 million trees. You can read Clare's full bio on this page, of course. Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you for doing this really important work.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you.
It takes everyone, right?
Certainly does.
Our first question, which we'd like to begin with everybody, is what does an iconic leader mean to you?
Oh my God.
Yes.
What does an iconic leader mean to me? I see an iconic leader. I'm not thinking of myself in this department, by the way. I'm just like thinking what that actually is. Somebody who is willing to stand utterly in their authenticity and not be part of the crowd. Somebody that is no longer needing to kowtow or bow to a system that they do not resonate with, and therefore is moving beyond moving beyond fear, whether it's fear of rejection or fear of not being understood or fear of ridicule or fear of persecution, because they have to stand in their values and they lead from their values. That to me is somebody who they're completely uncompromising. They're unwilling to compromise on their values. That's what an iconic leader is to me.
Yeah.
And preferably, an iconic leader that has fabulous values and that is actually doing something that is positive and inclusive. I know there are iconic leaders out there that have been absolutely destructive and fracturing, but there's a type that I prefer to hang out with, and it's the former rather than the latter.
Mm-hmm. I just lost it. I had a question for you. Oh, what's been so beautiful during this series is us learning about leaders that we didn't already know about. So it's like so easy to say, well, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, like these giants that we've known for so long. But are there people alive today, or maybe not even alive, that aren't like, the few that everybody knows that you really resonate with their work and how they've shown up in leadership, that you could share with us, like who they are?
The primary one for me would be Wangari Maathai.
Mm-hmm.
And Wangari was the first Black woman to win a Nobel Peace Prize. And she started the Greenbelt movement in Africa, and her organization's planted over 50 million trees across Kenya.
Oh.
But Wangari became one of the first Kenyan women to be university educated, one of the first women to become a professor. She helped bring down a corrupt government. She was alienated by all her friends at some point. She was beaten up. She was put in a coma twice. She was seriously persecuted for being the change that said women are change makers. Women have value. Sorry, our forest is not for sale. No, you can't come in and do this. That's what I mean. It's like she had a value set that she would not compromise on. And she did it with fierce love, absolute fierce love on behalf of everybody. And she had great periods of being totally alone, and she still stuck with it. And she did help bring down a corrupt government, and left a huge legacy. And when she died of cervical cancer, actually. And what was amazing, the first time I went fundraising to New York, I ended up sleeping in Wangari's bed, in Wangari's apartment that a friend of mine held for her. And I had no idea that out of the whole of Manhattan, I ended up in Wangari's space, which was like this, because when she died, I cried more for her than I cried for family members, because she was such an inspiration to me. And, I met her once. My husband knew her. I know a lot of people who knew her well. I stood in front of her, watching her get completely besieged at an Amnesty International thing in London. And she was this big, beautiful, shining, radiant creature who was just a smile, you know. And I thought, am I going to go and try and fight my way through the crowd and say, hi, Wangari, I'm doing this thing. And, you know, and I'd love you to be the patron because the only reason I've got the courage to try is because of you. And that's the truth for me. That makes me want to cry, actually. I was so terrified of having a go at tree sisters. I was so terrified. And in the end, I just thought, am I going to get put into a coma? Am I going to get deserted by my friends? Is the country going to try and throw me out? Like, what's the worst that can happen to me as a privileged white woman? You know, the worst that can happen to me is everyone says, oh my God, you're just crap. Why did you even bother trying? You failed. And it's like, well, at least I tried, you know, that's not exactly dreadful. But Wangari was, you know, beaten up and she went through horrors and she stayed the course. So I just figured, if she can do it, I can damn well have a go. And when I looked at her, I just thought, the biggest tribute I can be for you is to go and do the work. Like, I'll just go and do the work. And then she died very soon after that. And I remember walking on the land that I lived on at the time and crying and crying and crying, and then just feeling her in the trees. I just felt her in the trees. And she had this wonderful story, which is very famous, called the Hummingbird Story. And the hummingbird is very appropriate to this interview, actually, because there was a forest fire in the jungle and all the animals were stampeding out of the jungle. But going the other way was a hummingbird. And so the elephant said to the hummingbird, you know, what are you doing? And the hummingbird was just like running to the stream, filling up its beak and coming back and dumping its beak load of water onto the forest fire and going back and filling up its beak. And wow, I'm really tearful. This is so interesting. I might cry my way through the entire interview. And, you know, in the answer to what are you doing, what came back was what I can. Mm. And that was Wangari's message, was do what you can. You know, do what you can. And so many of us, myself included, get stopped en route to the manifestation or the bringing forward of the gifts that we have inside us because our past conditioning or our low self-esteem is telling us that we can't do it, essentially. But we can, you know, whether there's a hummingbird inside you or an elephant inside you, we can do this. There's so many gifts are lost to the world and they need to not be lost to the world. So the message in there is just so appropriate for all of us, you know, whether we feel like we're a hummingbird inside or we feel like we're an elephant inside, it's actually completely irrelevant. You know, each of us have got gifts to bring, and whatever we've got needs to come forward now, because, you know, we stand at this critical point for humanity. Life is never going to be the same again for any of us. So there is no point trying to be the same old, same old. We've got this gauntlet thrown down from creation saying, are you going to play full out or are you going to whimper and be snuffed out by your own behavior? You know, I don't believe we're a whimper. I think we're a roar. And I think the roar is what will actually carry us. But that roar needs to come, you know, up from the heart that says, I don't care if I'm a hummingbird. I'm going to try and put the fire out, you know. I love that story.
All right, sourcing the roar. Talk to us about that. You know, how do you source your roar? Because everybody who steps up into this leadership position, they are always called to go deeper into sourcing that roar, to match the resistance and to move through all of the stuff your hero had gone through. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, I always say to the women in my network, there's a raging river inside you, whether you're in touch with it or not. You know, if your life has caused your river to be dammed and dammed and dammed, and it's all full of debris and you've largely forgotten who you are, that river is still a river. You know, the fullness of your soul is still there. It just may have been, you may have just been conditioned away from it and brainwashed into believing that you're less than. But you're still a raging river, and that river is there. And there are two kind of ways through to it for me. One is allowing yourself to touch your longings. Like, your longings are like a guiding signpost to what your soul is here for. You know, your longings are a signpost to what your soul is calling for. And I'm not talking about the longings for a new car or for, you know, a better job. I'm calling about the longings that are deep inside to feel personally fulfilled. That feeling of, you know, am I satisfied with being temperate when actually I'm tropical? Am I satisfied with being a yes person when actually deep inside I'm squashing the part of me that knows I'm cleanly out of integrity with my own values? Am I satisfied to be in a relationship that is frankly causing me to compromise myself at every turn? You know, because honoring your longings starts with being honest with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself to even understand what your longings are. And so many people don't even let themselves feel their longings because they're so convinced that they'll never be met. Therefore, they live a temperate life and they live a half life, and it's decidedly unsatisfying. So are you brave enough to be honest about how fulfilled you are in your life? Are you honest enough with yourself to acknowledge where you're out of integrity with yourself and your own values? And then the other thing is, are you actually taking on board what's going on in this world, or are you in denial? If you're in denial, you're playing the old game, frankly, and you're missing the biggest opportunity that life has ever presented any of us. You're missing the game of transformation, which says humanity gets to redefine itself, humanity gets to recreate itself. And we've got about 5 years to make that entire shift if we're going to survive as a species. Well, if you're blind to the fact that the survival of our species is under profound threat, then you're not awake. So then the question is, are you willing to be awake to both what's going on outside you and to actually face and feel it? Because if you are, it's terrifying and it's desperately sad, especially with the extinction crisis that's going on. The end of weather for, you know, we've passed the point of trustworthy weather. We're never going to have it again. You know, the children that are being born now will never, ever, ever have what we grew up with. Like, it's done, it's over. To actually acknowledge that, and that we could have made a difference because we were given the warnings 30, 40 years ago and we didn't make a difference. If you're not willing to feel it and face it, then you're kind of in some sort of a weird la-la land within which you're playing the same game that is killing our future. So the willingness to face and feel it will touch, hopefully, a depth of grief in you that will have you on your knees. I want everybody on their friggin' knees. I want everybody on their knees. Because unless you fully feel it and you face it, it's not going to break you open in a way that will unleash that river that you are. So that roar needs to come in response to the gravity of the situation. It's like letting life's roar, the roar of Gaia, as she's saying, I want my whales, I want my dolphins, I want my penguins, I want my trees, I want my butterflies, I want, you know, all these majestic creations that are going right now. You know, we get to be the rainforest speaking back. We get to let that come through us. Like, the roar of life is there, but whilst you're like this as a human being walking around severed from your feelings, you're not going to do anything. That's what I mean. It's like, I see this as, you know, I'm somebody that I've cried about 20 rivers. I could have probably washed India back its rivers. You know, there's 9 that have already failed in the south of India. I've cried for this planet for 15 years profoundly, mostly on a daily basis. And why I say to people that crying works is because your grief is your love. It's actually your love. It taps you back into your heartbreak, steers you towards your courage. If you let your heart break open, you will never be the same again. You will move into action. You know, I've stopped crying now. I don't know whether it's because, you know, and I'm not actually afraid anymore either, but I've gone through so much grief and so much fear, but now I'm just fully in action. Like, there is not one cell of my body that isn't in action. There's no room for fear. There's no room for hesitation. There's no room for what if I can or what if I can't. I'm not even interested to have those conversations anymore. I'm only interested in, what's the game? How do we put ourselves to it? How do we get through this? How do we affect as many people as possible? Being in action, saying yes to your soul, saying yes to your roar, saying yes to your fire, is a way of literally transforming yourself. because life knows what we're capable of. We haven't got a clue. Life knows what we're capable of. We say yes to life. She will create a path that shows you to yourself, that gives you to yourself, that educates yourself, that grows yourself, and that basically flays away all the things that we've been identified in the past, which kept us less than, or stopped, or whatever the excuses are that we've had to not be in our leadership. They'll just fall away. If you say yes to life, without even knowing what you're saying yes to, if you say yes, everything will change.
You know, I love this quote I heard from a preacher, and she was saying about, you know, when you're saying yes, when God comes tapping and you have the opportunity to say yes, and we're like, you know, God's like, what's the answer? And you're like, well, where am I going? And God's like, that's none of your business. Is it yes or is it no? And so it's like, is it yes? And then allowing that yes to guide you.
Yeah.
I know there's a little bit shared about your journey, but will you share with us about that moment of yes? Like what moved you from sitting and crying the rivers to actually going into action and knowing that it had to be a yes and there was no turning back?
You know, there were 2 points. One was, actually there's been thousands of points along the way, but there were 2 major like cataclysms. One was the ritual theater I did where I played The Rape of the Earth, and one was the car crash in which I was actually given Tree Sisters. In The Rape of the Earth, I got to be the earth, and I got to sit in front of a big audience of people who I was at a dance class with, a week-long dance class. This must have been in about 2001 or something. And back then I was desperately shy. I was still a complete introvert. I mean, you know, the person that I am now, if anybody had told me even 10 years ago that I would be this person, I would have laughed in their face. Like, I was a total introvert, to the point of being more or less a recluse. I just did not like being around people. I couldn't handle it. And I, you know, my little pod of 7 people were told, you're going to play The Rape of the Earth. And I said, oh, I'll be the earth, because that seemed like you'd have the least to do in front of people. Like I could just sit there and be the earth, and then whatever happened, happened. And so they dressed me in all the clothing that we had between all 7 of us until I was just like this massive, like big ball of clothing. And then they sat me on a throne and they raped me. And what that looked like in terms of the rape of the earth was they started pulling off my clothes and pulling on my hair and like stripping me, because they were deforesting me and mountaintop removal and removing my fish and poisoning me and fighting over every last bit of me whilst not being able to see me. And all the time I'm handing out cups of tea, because that's what she does. She says, I'll keep providing whilst you destroy me. I'll keep providing whilst you shred me to pieces. I'll keep providing while you destroy all these creations that I have spent billions of years creating. I'll keep providing. That's what she does. And at the point that I was naked, apart from, I think, a sock and a scarf, I had to deliver my most blood-curdling scream and like throw myself on the floor. And I threw myself on the floor. And while I was doing that, my little posse were supposed to have a breakthrough and a community moment and realized that they had to put me back on my throne and dress me again. But I was on the floor going into shock. And all I could hear was, so funny, I can't tell this story without crying, I never can. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again, which is one of our childhood, our nursery rhymes in England. And I was just going, oh my God, it's over. Oh my God, it's over. It's done. You can't put a planet back into therapy. We can't put her back together again after we've destroyed her. We don't get a second chance. All the feedback loops, like, and it was ramping up in me. And I was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, we're done, we're done, we're done. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, I have to do something. And then they put me back on my throne and they dressed me, and I'm sat there and I'm freezing cold, like completely in shock. And I remember I was staring up at the audience and everyone was in floods of tears. Like everyone was crying. And I was like icy, shocked, dissociated. Like they had to literally get me off my throne and sit me down because I couldn't walk. And I sat there. And 20 years before that experience, I'd started having nightmares about climate change. So I had started having nightmares that there were no more clouds in England, that the weather changed forever, that basically which we're heading for because the Gulf Stream will stop shortly. You know, that basically the currents, the weather currents that bring us temperate weather were going to fail, and that there were no more clouds. And it's what started me on my journey. And I became obsessed with clouds because I was terrified of the reality of no more clouds and no more rain and no more fertility, and the forest would die and the land would die. Anyway, at the end of the ritual theater, they were giving out presents, and they handed me this little square present, and I opened it, and it was a blue book with a white cloud on the front, and in the cloud it just said, "You can change the world." And I started sobbing like a banshee. Like I started like wailing, and another part of me was just like, remove yourself from this room. Everyone's doing the present giving and it's all very jolly. And I'm like howling at the top of my lungs. So I went outside and I howled like probably as deeply as I ever have in my life for about an hour. And during that hour of crying, where I properly broke, like I broke. And I broke because the conversation that was going on in my psyche was, oh my God, it's all over. The world is dying. I have to put every cell of my being towards doing something about this. I can't live with myself if I go one moment longer not addressing this completely with my whole soul. And the other part of me was going, but you've got nothing to give. You're nothing. You don't know anything about anything. What could you possibly do? You're so inadequate. You don't know, you just don't know anything. Like, it's ridiculous. And then another part of me would just go, but I have to do something. And it was just like, you can't smack, but I have to do something. And then as that war was waging, I kind of lifted up from it, and I started seeing every person going, oh, I want to do this amazing thing. Oh, but I can't really do it because, what will people think? And I started to move into the like collective psyche of the world going, oh, I daren't have a go because I'm not good enough. And then I started feeling into the women of the world who just daren't step forward because what will the men say? And we're supposed to be subservient and we're supposed to fulfill on this role. And my rage was getting bigger and bigger, and it's this outrage, and I'm howling louder and louder, and just I can't bear it for a moment longer. I couldn't bear the state of our world being in this state of, well, I'm not going to bring my gifts because what if? Like, that became like viscerally intolerable for me to go any further. And by the time I finished crying, I was done. Like, I was done. There was only one path ahead of me, and it was because during the crying fit, it was like, well, what's going to win? My neuroticism, my insecurity, and my smallness, or the part of me that loves this world enough to say that the world matters more than my insecurity? And the world won. That was the turning point. The world won, and she broke me into a million pieces that day. And when I had the car crash that gave me Tree Sisters, the first thing that happened, so a tree stopped me going over an edge. I was swerving on ice and a tree stopped me going over an edge. And that was like this huge metaphor to humanity. Like, trees, reforestation can stop humanity going over an edge. And but the very first thing I saw were two words in this bright light inside my car: the experiment. And then this voice started talking to me. It was a male voice inside the car, and it said, humanity is running out of time, but it's not over yet. It's going to take all of us to get through. It's going to take all of us rising to the challenge to get through what's coming. The single greatest threat is fear of failure. But you can get over fear of failure by calling everything you do an experiment, because you can't fail an experiment. You can only learn. And then I was given the entire project of what Tree Sisters was and what to do. But it was that thing. The single greatest threat facing humanity is fear of failure. And that was that argument that I was in during the ritual theater of, your soul rises, your ego hits it down. Your soul rises, your ego hits it down. That's why I come back to, when your longings rise, you have to hold space for them. And if your little ego is going, oh, but it'll never happen, or it like, what will sense it? It's like, fuck it. We're at that point where it can't win anymore. What matters? Your children's future or maintaining the status quo? Because the status quo is over. There is none anymore. So all there is left is this opportunity for a vast collective awakening. That's where we are. So what are you going to do? Be part of it or turn your back on it? And then when the shit hits the fan, go, oh no, I did nothing because what if it went wrong? Or actually I did everything because I needed to know that I would have done everything. I have to do everything. That's what I'm doing. Everything. That's how it started.
Wow. Whew, the experiment. I do feel like that is so, so powerful. just the power and play of creation. We're so powerful.
It's the reason Tree Sisters exists. Because every time I have fallen over, and I've fallen over countless times because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. I started from scratch with nothing, no money, no backing, no knowledge, no experience. Every time I fall over, my team go, get back up again. You can't stop. It's an experiment. We can't fail. We're learning. This is learning. And it's just like, oh God, they were so clever to tell me that before they gave me the job, because, you know, I would have given up. It's been incredibly hard, but it's an experiment and I'm learning. And so now I just hold myself to that. And that's one of my gifts to all the listeners is can't fail. There's no such thing. Call everything you do an experiment, learn.
Yeah. And the state of the world that we're in, it's beyond our own individual sense of what failure is. It's just, there is no more time to do anything else but to leap forward, fail forward, if you will, but continually move forward for sure.
Well, we have no idea what we're capable of.
Yeah.
We have no idea what we're capable of. We know a human being as a dominant, separated, dislocated thing. That's what we've been taught that we are since the scientific revolution. We have no idea the power that is possible to come through us when we are woven back into the fabric of this world. The world knows that we're woven in. Our egos have separated us. Therefore, we live in this actually very powerless state that believes that power is money and wealth and influence. And it's not. It's the false patriarchal paradigm speaking. It's a totally disconnected, bizarre scenario. Feminine paradigm is power through. It's not power over. It's deep relationship. It's intimacy with creation. Creation is infinitely powerful. So what if humanity started to recognize itself as woven into an infinitely powerful system that if it bows to it in humility and starts to honor it, could bring through solutions and potency, the likes of which we've never seen. You know, that's the game I'm in. I'm in the game of fully believing that an evolutionary leap is possible, even though it looks completely dire. You know, would we change our behavior and course correct away from being a consumer species if the shit wasn't hitting the fan? No, because we're addicted to convenience. We don't like change. We don't like not knowing. We don't like not knowing the answers. We wouldn't be doing this. So we are creating the circumstances for our own evolutionary leap. Will we make it? I don't know. But what I do know is we are using a fraction of our power. So actually, as far as I'm concerned, anything's possible. So I'm not failing forward. I feel like we get a chance to fly forward, actually. It's just a case of realizing that we do have wings and starting to use them.
Say more about that power for someone who may, you know, just feel tired and overwhelmed and think that, you know, I have children and I have a job and I have to pay the bills. And even though I care deeply, I just don't have time to sit here and cry the rivers so that I can get in touch with the longings.
Well, you know, I can't talk as a mother because I'm not a mother. I can talk as a mother of Tree Sisters, which is an incredibly demanding baby in terms of, you know, it's about, it doesn't keep me up at night quite as much as having a small child would, but it consumes my every waking moment. It depends what you want. It depends what you want. It's back to, you know, my reality is I work, you know, 14 to sometimes 19-hour days. And I don't have much time to do A, B, and C. And yet how I choose to put myself into something, I allow myself to have my full emotional scale, my full emotional range in every moment. And I arrange my life so that I can cry in a heartbeat. I can cry with my board. I can cry with my team. I can cry. And I'm not just saying all I do is cry, but I'm saying my aliveness comes from allowing my joy to be there when I'm joyful, my sadness to be there when I'm sad, my rage to be there when I am, so that I create this circumstance within which my river isn't getting clogged up. My river gets to go, and now it's rapids, and now it's a still pond, and now it's, you know, I'm the whole thing. And so in your life, are you letting yourself have an authentic emotional response to what you're doing? Because if our emotions get clogged up, then we get exhausted, then we get dull, then we then we just start, you know, I mean, we all know what being burnt out feels like. We've all done it. Being burnt out feels utterly demoralizing, largely depressing. Like you're never going to be able to get up, like you're never going to be able to do anything. I've done several major burnouts in my life. And I skirt it with Tree Sisters because I work too hard. But coming back in touch with beauty, I mean, and, you know, in every step of the way, as far as I'm concerned, we have choice. We have choice to just believe that this is how life is and I can't do it. Okay, you know, I'm not going to sit there and try with somebody that just doesn't believe that they could ever change anything. I'm not going to try and sit there and convince them that they can, you know. But if there's even a speck of you that knows that somewhere inside you, you've acquiesced to the circumstances that are exhausting you and you don't have to, then the question is can you find a spark inside yourself and turn that spark into a flame? Like, can you start to nurture the part of yourself that does need more than this, that does have longings? You know, even the idea, like, do I want to be a roar or a whimper? Like, just holding those two things and just saying, what am I satisfied with? You may not know how to get from one to the other, but just acknowledging that you don't want one opens the possibility that another can come into your reality. Like, I'm constantly saying to people, don't wait until you think you've got your ducks in a row before you do something. Don't wait until it's all lined up. Life doesn't do that. It puts one stepping stone in front of you and it asks you to jump. And you have to trust that there's going to be another one and there's going to be another one. But if you're waiting for the whole path to show up, you're never going to do anything. But the power, to me, in my world, it's like understanding that the space between my own cells and the space inside my own cells. If you think that your cells are like 0.00000, whatever it is, however many noughts, 9 matter, and the rest of it is space. Or as Deepak says, you know, inside your cell, it's 9.9999999 to the power of whatever space. Then consciousness, power, limitlessness lives inside every cell in your body. We're mostly that. We're mostly not material, actually. And if you understand that you're a limitless being, and if you're willing to sit and kind of open part of your mind to, it's like one of my favorite phrases is show me. It's just show me. It's like bowing in humility before life. I don't have to know the answers, but show me. Okay, I'm here. You know, there's a requirement of humility. It's one of our first values inside of Tree Sisters, humility. Bow before the immensity of all that is and ask to be shown. Don't, you know, open your mind enough. Don't believe that you've got all the answers. Be prepared to not know. If you're prepared to not know something, including how to sort your own life out, then you're making yourself available for life to come in and show you. You know, my old spiritual teacher used to say, trying to understand the workings of the universe with your mind is like trying to empty an ocean into a bucket using a spoon. And I believe that. Like, I don't try and figure it out with my mind. I try and follow my heart, let my mind deal with what it will, open to the universe and say, show me. And so, like, going into a state of humility outside, my favorite way is to find beauty and focus on beauty. Like, absolutely let my breath be taken away by the trees or the flowers or the hummingbirds or the river or whatever, or the sky. You know, the sky is such a profound source of power because it's all of creation. It's all out there, limitless. There's no edge, you know. And if you can bow before the sky and just say, you know, show me, then if you soften your whole self, then you can start to literally breathe that limitlessness into you, and you can start to feel the energy in your cells start to change. You can draw in sunlight like a leaf. You can, you know, there's just so many ways to be open to inviting a different experience, but the key is being open. And that's, again, that's a choice. Like, there's consciousness needed to make the choice to make yourself available to something bigger than you. And that can just be through finally going, I don't know how to change my life. Well, then you're available. I don't know what I'm here for. Well, then you're available. I don't know how to break out of this depression. Well, then you're available, you know, like make yourself available, and then feel into your longings, feel into your grief, be true to yourself, see if you're capable of, even if you have no idea how to get out of that relationship or that job or that thing that is killing you, can you even begin to admit that it's killing you? Or can you begin to admit the fact that you know that you're only playing a quarter of the game that you're here to play, and that the 3/4 scares the crap out of you and you've no idea how to do it? And just start there. You know, to me, your power starts with honesty. Honesty with yourself. And that's not easy. I'm not going to say it is. It's not easy. But your soul knows what you're here for. So unless you're actually going to sit and listen, don't want to waste a life. Not right now, not at this moment in history. We don't want a single wasted life.
Do you have a support system? Who supports you?
My husband.
God bless.
I have a big support system because I've grown a global sisterhood around the world. And I can tap into that global sisterhood at any time of day or night, because it's active all day and all night, because it's growing fast in Australia and New Zealand, the Southern Hemisphere, and it's you know, there's always someone awake. And my team is also works 24 hours because we cover the whole globe. So there's always someone awake. So at any point of day or night, there's somebody to reach out to. And you know, one of the main things about Tree Sisters is, for women especially, and that's why it's for women, and it's not that Tree Sisters excludes men, it doesn't at all. But men haven't been suppressed the way that women have. And climate change is an expression of patriarchy, in terms of we have dominated life. You know, we've created an economic system that's actually, it requires the death of life in order to thrive. So there was only ever going to be one future for a patriarchal system. And we're there, you know, it's going to kill life. It doesn't see the value of the feminine, doesn't see the value of life. It only sees life as something that it can use for short-term gain. So, but women have also been used. Like, you know, one of the things I heard in a car crash was women and nature share a common history. What's been done to one's been done to the other. And that has been normalized. It's been normalized that we dominate and we own and we claim and we use, whether it's women or it's nature. And it's also been normalized that a woman is a target if she shows up a certain way, if she shows up in her power, if she shows up in her beauty or her sensuality, whatever. It's her fault if she gets raped. It's her fault if she gets pulled down. You know, we're up against a very real momentum that's been normalized, momentum of consciousness that's been normalized. And it's very, very easy to fall to your own fears when you're alone, to fall to your own insecurities, to talk yourself out of something. But when you're in a large group of people that are all believing in you, like when you walk into a room full of people, or a room full of women with your new idea, it's very rare they're all going to go, oh, that's crap, you're awful, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's more likely that the togetherness creates that increased power and that increased courage to bring that thing forward. And so having support is probably the single biggest thing that anybody can do at this point if you're in fear. And so we've created a global support system. That's what Tree Sisters is. It's a global support system. Anybody can come in. It's free. It's available. It's there on the web. There's an online community, or several online communities you can climb in. There's always someone to talk to. And because the first thing is, we're actually not alone. None of us are alone in this existential and very real crisis of climate change. Everybody's freaked out. It's just a lot of people don't know what to do, and they're choosing denial because it's the easy way through. The frightening thing about coming out of denial is then you have to face the scale of the problem. If you're trying to face it as an individual, it'll flatten you. Mm-hmm. If you face it as a global network of women who are out to change the world, then you've got something to live into. Then it brings out your raw, because that's what we're doing. We're calling out the raw. We're saying, what can we do together? Well, we've got no idea. Well, then suddenly you've got that limitless edge again that you can just push on. Just like, well, what can we do? What can we do? And how can I inspire this person? And how can I reach out to that person? You know, we're cooking some huge stuff at the moment. And we're cooking a campaign for 2020 called Year of the Tree. We want to reach every single person on the planet. Are we going to do it? I have no idea. Do I know how to do it? No. Has that ever stopped me? No. We're bringing together NGOs from all over the world. We're all putting our ideas together. Do any of us know how to do it? No. Why? It's never been done before. Why? We've never been in this situation before. It's all to play for. But I know that even my organization can't do it alone, which is why we're gathering together all these different organizations. Let's have our organizations holding hands, not just individuals. We need everybody playing together. We need out of our silos. We need to stop the judgment. We need to stop shooting at each other. And we need to start saying, okay, enough of all these ridiculous behaviors. There's one thing we need, all of us need, and it's a planet. Can we stop all the distractions and the weird politics and the ridiculousness, all the posturing, and actually get on with what's real? Well, we need to do that in our own lives first. And one of the biggest ways to do that is inside of a support system that wants to believe that you're capable of anything. And that's what I'm growing. So my husband is my everything. I don't know if I could even begin to do this without him. He's astonishing and incredibly patient. Nature, my everything. When you know, in all those moments where I feel like I'm losing some beauty, I get into the river. And then I have got circles upon circles upon circles of women all around the world that if I say, I'm going into a meeting, I'm really frightened, I'm off my game, help, 100 women will come back and say, we've got your back. It really helps. Like, it really, really helps. Like, oh my God, I just couldn't do this alone. Couldn't do it alone.
Definitely time. No more time for alone.
No more time for alone. Not for any of us.
Yeah. And I love that place where you shared about the ritual theater, because I was having a conversation actually with Nina Simons, who's in this series, and we were talking about just the place where personal development, like how far do you take personal development before it becomes activism? Yeah. Like at what point is it just not about I developed myself? And that ritual theater, like that moment, and then the moment of the, like, that's just such a beautiful example. But I'm wondering if you have anything to say to that, because first it's liberating ourselves.
Yeah. Well, first of all, God bless Nina, who I love deeply. And I meet with people who are just like, I've been, you know, I did 5 rhythms dance for 25 years. And like I stopped briefly because I busted my foot. But, you know, people in there saying, you know, how long are you just going to keep dancing before you turn it into activism? How long are you going to keep meditating before you turn it into activism? What would I say in answer to this? Firstly, I can't tell anybody what to do with their lives. You know, I can't say, well, I can, and I do, but I shouldn't. You know, it's like each of us are uniquely on our own path. Did I expect to start having nightmares about climate change? No. Did I know I was walking into that ritual theater? No. Was I one person before it and one person after it? Yeah, completely different person after it. Same with the car crash. You know, these moments, and there's been many more moments like that in my life because I've got a job to do, and I was incredibly reticent, and so life slapped me around the head many, many times to take the choice away from me. Does it need to be that big a gesture for everybody? No. You know, we can fall into the trap of comparison, and we can fall into the trap of believing that it has to be all or nothing just because I'm sitting here saying, you know, every fiber of my body. That's true for me. That's true for my soul, and that's because my soul was encoded with the thing that I'm doing now. Activism can look like many different things. It doesn't just have to look like standing on the pink boat in the middle of Piccadilly Circus, you know, yelling about Extinction Rebellion. But it can, if what is burning in you is the end of lying in government, then that's what that looks like. If it looks like ending old growth forest, it may mean tying yourself to a tree. If it means ending human trafficking, it could mean that. If it means just learning to say no in your relationship, that could be the biggest thing that's ever happened in the lineage of your family as a woman, to say no to something. That's a form of activism. So I think it's going to be utterly unique for everybody. If you're not prepared to look at what's happening environmentally, then it's very unlikely that your behavior is actually going to change in any way that's going to make a difference. Can I force people to look environmentally? No. And in all honesty, I don't really try with those that are in profound denial, because I don't have the time or the energy to try and convince those that there are so many that are awake to it and immobilized. They're the people that I'm interested in reaching, because if we're awake and we're in fear and we're immobilized and we don't know what to do, and so we're continuing on our path of self-development, but nothing's actually changing in our lives in terms of the bigger picture, then I would say, first of all, again, get honest with yourself. Get honest about whether that's actually enough for you. Is it enough that you're just watching from the sidelines when you've got this consciousness and this brilliance and this courage that is you, that's sitting there on the side of the swimming pool, but you won't throw yourself in? If that is you, come into Tree Sisters, or find a group where there is support, or go to, like, find a group, a local group where there is support, like something where you don't feel alone or alienated, and where other people understand where you're at, and where you can talk about the fact that you're feeling held back, or you don't know what to do, or you want to do something but you don't know what it is. You know, that the biggest thing for me is not shaming ourselves where we are, like accepting where we are, but getting honest about it. If you're honest about it, then the next step from there is whatever life shows you. And that's going to be unique for every single person. So yes, I have a longing for all of these major personal growth organizations. I just reached out to one really recently, actually, to say, you know, what if we grow a forest for you? What if we seeded trees in every single course that you do? What if we connected your whole ecosystem of effect into an ecosystem of impact? You know, I'm playing that game because I want to insert trees in everything. Next year, when it's Year of the Tree, maybe we can be loud enough that an awful lot of those things can happen. I mean, to me, one of the things is and that's Tree Sisters and all these other NGOs that we're gathering, if we can come out with the right invitation, maybe there's enough fear and concern in the world that everybody will start taking action. Like, they'll understand, okay, what are we doing? If we could be doing more individually, I believe that we would be. You know, that's the thing. I try to operate from a place of accepting myself where I am and accepting everybody else where they are. Like, if you're going to sit and judge somebody immediately, you're going to shut them down, and then nothing's going to change. But if you can sit with somebody and just listen to them and accept where they are, and then help them get honest about where they are, then a lot will change. So I guess if I was going to be really confrontational, I'd just say, do you want a living planet or don't you? And if you want a living planet, then are you willing to do something about it? And if you don't want a living planet, can you explain to yourself why that is? There's honesty. Again, get honest, you know, get honest.
Thank you.
You're saying so much. I'm just taking it all in. It's probably the quietest I've been, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed listening what's coming through you so eloquently and flowing through you. That river that rages through you.
I know. I get a bit. Well, I am. That's the problem. I'm a total raging river, and
no problem for us.
I'm so passionate about. I just so want to live in a world of people who are joyfully being alive to what's possible. You know, I just want that world. I want us to realize that we're so much more than we've been taught.
Mm-hmm. That's the greatest gift, I believe, that's available to us right now, is recognizing that and owning it. And obviously, what people can do who are watching this is go to treesisters.org, join treesisters.org.
Claire, I know you have a powerful free gift for this community that can further ignite this fire that we've been tapping into, the raging river, all of it.
a while ago when we campaigned, we brought together some of the most outrageous feminine leaders on the planet to do an interview series called Wild Hope for a New Humanity. And some of those interviews just got absolutely, well, actually most of them got rave reviews, because before I interviewed these women, I talked to each of them and I was like, what's your edge? What's your growing edge? Like, what's most alive in you? And so we would go to these really interesting places. So like they're not just an interview, they were just like, okay, what's your greatest edge and what's my greatest edge and how can we put them together and have a completely raw conversation? So it's a group of those with women leaders, and I consider each of them like a transmission or like a transfusion. So they're the sort of thing that if you're driving, like put one of them on and just get the transfusion, like let it in, like let it work its magic on you. They're really powerful.
Awesome. Well,
and obviously, you know, come to Tree Sisters. What we exist for, we exist to help make it as normal to give back to nature as it currently is to take nature for granted. And any of us that are living normal, very carbon hungry lives without sucking that carbon out of the atmosphere, we're acting as if climate change is fine, and it's not. And one of the things that we're doing is we're making it normal for everybody to give money for trees, which we're planting in the tropics, a large amount, like well over 2 million a year now. And we're planting in Madagascar and Brazil and Cameroon and Nepal and India and somewhere else, which I now can't remember. And these are extraordinary projects with really strong social stories. You know, we're getting people out of slavery in Madagascar. We're saving endangered species. We're replenishing watersheds. We're changing the weather, which is what trees do. And you can either live your life saying climate change is dreadful and doing nothing about it, or you can live your life saying climate change is dreadful and doing something about it, because I'm planting fast-growing tropical trees that I know sequester carbon 3 times as fast as temperate. I'm doing it in all these countries and I'm changing all these lives whilst figuring out how to transform my own lifestyle. That is what we're after, and that's what we're an invitation for. And so I'm going to invite every single one of you, please, to come and make that core to your life, like embed trees in your life and then see whether everything stays the same, because it won't.
Okay, I'm so excited. We're going to do this a little bit differently. I was going to pause the recording, say bye to our tribe, but we're still recording. We're going to keep the recording. I was going to have a check-in with you, but I'm sure that we're aligned on this. So it's just been coming through so strongly during this session. We have been tracking of an organization to raise money for through this series. And I've just had my feelers, and I just kept kind of going in a couple of different directions. And I was actually thinking about raising money for Tree Sisters last year with a different project, but now it's feeling so aligned with the Year of the Tree coming up. So I'm just announcing this live. I'm going to keep the recording. When the series sells and as we raise money, we're going to give the proceeds to Year of the Tree, and just we're so aligned. I mean, I know we're both so deeply moved by your devotion, your commitment, and the bigger vision. So I'm just letting you know, Claire, and I'm letting our viewers know now, although they will know it because it'll be pre-written. This is pre-recorded. But I think it's super aligned and right for us to do this. So.
Oh, bless you. Well, and we'll report back on how many trees you're planting, you know, and I mean, and I'll say that to all the listeners, it's like, we're growing a global forest, and I'd love you all to be able to say, I'm growing a forest. And it changes something in your life when you know that you're restoring. And to me, that becomes a new bottom line. Like, we're all pumping carbon into the atmosphere, so we all need to be restoring. And then there's the other stuff that we're doing to make a difference in the world. But we have to make sure we've got a world. That's the thing. It's the ground that she's our everything. Can we please start giving back to her?
Yes, please.
So I'm thrilled. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, we just had an amazing article published in the Guardian newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
It will have planted 1 million trees within a decade. Yeah. Like the amount of new monthly donors that came in from that one article was over 110,000 trees worth a month, just from one article. It was so satisfying. It was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And there's your response. Like, it's just so satisfying to do something, and here are the trees, and And you're touching lemurs and gorillas and jaguars and ocelots and endangered monkeys and sloth, and like you're creating habitat. It's so satisfying. It's so satisfying.
Thank you, sister. Thank you so much for your courage and your yes and your time and just all of it. We are so on board with you. Just feel free. Like, we are just right here with you. I know everyone who's been watching has been deeply inspired, transformed, ignited to their fire, to their river, all of those places where we are one with the earth and we may have forgotten. So we are so grateful that you've been with us.
Well, thank you for asking some really great questions and letting me be the running river roaring, and let's see what comes of this, shall we?
Shall. Lots of love to everyone who is watching. We're so excited to be on this journey with you, and we are hopeful, and we're wanting to be in that hope and action together. So lots of love, everyone.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.